It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. Folks, it's time. It's time to wake up the lions. And that's why we're here today. Folks, we have a lioness with us today who has an amazing story, has done some amazing things. Cannot wait to hear all about it. This wonderful person is a wife, a mother of five, a writer, a podcaster, and a prodigal child saved by God's undeserved grace. And we're going to get into all of those topics as we roll. Please welcome Ana Murby to the show. Ana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Appreciate you coming on. I really do. You're busy.
Yes, yes, I am. Because on top of all that, I also am learning the Russian language. So this is something I've
All
always
right.
wanted to do. I started in high school and gave up promptly because teenagers, they don't like to do anything hard. And that's where I was. Gave up for many years, felt guilt about it semi recently, like 4 years ago. Said, I'm going to do it again. And I'm not going to give up this time. And of course,
Wow.
it's difficult, but I'm trying to teach my kids that even if it is difficult, you can stick with it and you can make it through. So,
Nice. Nice. Russian just for the fun of it. I'm not sure I've heard that before.
well, I don't know what it was, but somewhere back in my high school years, I just fell in love with the language, the culture, and it was just the only language I ever wanted to learn. Took 4 years of Spanish in high school, didn't do so well with it. My teacher asked me why. I said, well, I don't really want to learn the language. She's like, well, you are Hispanic. Why don't you want to learn your own language? I said, well, it's not a language that interests me. And she said, well, what is? And I said, Russian. And she got mad at me in Spanish and walked off. I was like, okay.
Okay. All right. I think I'm starting to see a little bit of that old rebellion,
Yes.
from an early
Yes.
age.
It
Gotcha.
was hidden well, but it came out every once in a while.
Nice. That's just so pigeonholing, though. It's a little crazy. I mean, you're
hmm
Hispanic, so you're supposed to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, I'm
exactly. It's
Italian.
like,
Nobody made me learn Italian.
yeah, and I'm half half Caucasian too from my mom's side. It's like, what am I supposed to do with that? That's the half that didn't care to learn Spanish, I guess.
I'm glad you're saying the stuff and not me. Okay. All right. Okay, so you have an unbelievable story, and the end of your reading, of course, is prodigal child saved by God's undeserving grace. I read a lot in your bio, and a lot of things that you've kind of put out there. You lived an interesting life, and it
hmm
sounds like you may have pushed a few boundaries and kind of had a rebellion going on for a while. Um, where did that start? Because you mentioned that God was in your life early on, and then
Yeah.
you kind of went away from it when you had your own little closet rebellion here. So tell
Well,
folks what happened there. What's your story? Wherever you want to start.
well, I grew up in the church since I was a little baby going to church. So I knew everything head wise. I knew everything. But in the back of my mind, I just never felt saved, even though I had asked Jesus into my heart when I was 12 after watching the old school Left Behind movie called The Thief in the Night. It's like an old 70s movie, and it just scared me. I did not want to be left behind. So that was the reason why I accepted Jesus into my heart. Not exactly a pure, I want to know Jesus more kind of thing. It was more like, oh, please don't let me stay here. Don't send me to hell. But in the back of my mind, I just really always felt like I could never measure up to what he wanted me to be. I never felt good enough. I always felt there's something more he wants from me, but I don't know what it is. And he's not telling me, even though I'm asking him to tell me. I just really felt like he was not on my side, I guess is what I would equate it to. So I always felt like I was never good enough for him, that no matter how much good things I did, it was not good enough. And I didn't really understand that, well, duh, I'm not good enough. That's why I needed a savior. But that was never something I thought because I was told I was the good one. I was the one who rarely got in trouble because I observed all of my other family members who did things. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. This is what happens when you do. And if I did do something wrong, I always felt the guilt inside my stomach to the point where I could not physically make myself eat if I was hungry.
Hmm.
I just felt super nauseous and would feel that way until I confessed whatever it was, even if it wasn't anything big. And for example, my parents got divorced when I was 12. So I was living with my mom and my stepdad. They were very rigid in what I could and couldn't do. They sheltered me pretty bad. I could only listen to Christian girl music for a time. Maybe occasionally they'd let me listen to things that had like boys and girls in it, but they really monitored what I listened to. So my dad and my mom didn't ever get along. They certainly didn't get along after the divorce. So my dad would kind of just let me do whatever I wanted to do. And oh, your mom doesn't like it? Do it anyway. Ha ha, stick it to her
Mm,
kind of attitude.
ouch.
And I didn't want to do that because I knew what would happen. I'd feel sick to my stomach. They'd want to know what's going on. I'd tell them because I have to get this out of my system and I'd get in trouble for, going against the rules. So one time I was in this middle of liking Enrique Iglesias, I guess, for I don't know why. I look back on it now, I'm like, really? Why? But my dad got me one of his CDs and I listened to it while I was with my dad, but I felt nauseous by the time I got home that weekend and I couldn't handle the guilt. So I told my mom and my stepdad, they took it away. They talked to my dad about it and I got not as in trouble because I came clean, but I still got in trouble for it. So I just that's just the way that it was. I was a people pleaser. I wanted to make people happy. I couldn't voice my opinions in a way where I felt comfortable afterwards. Where if someone said, "Oh, can you do this for me?" I could say no and feel okay about that. That wasn't me. I wouldn't say no to people. Case in point was what I just said. I didn't really want to get the Enrique Iglesias CD. I didn't need it that bad. I knew what would happen if I got it, but I didn't want to upset my dad, so I did it. And then, I got in trouble for it. That was me in a nutshell for most of my life. And at some point, I just got tired of feeling like I couldn't do anything right, no matter how many times I did things right. I don't know if that makes any sense. I just, I kept doing the right things. I should have been feeling more close to God. I should have been feeling like He loved me more, like my family loved me more, but I never felt that way. I always felt like I was one step away from making a mistake and making them upset and making God upset. And He was watching from heaven, shaking His head, going, "Oh, she made another mistake. She was doing so well." And it just really was exhausting. And the final straw was when I married my first husband. He was emotionally and physically abusive to me and our daughter, but I never really wanted to marry him. I kind of saw the signs ahead of time that there was something wrong with him. But because him and I had had sex before we got married, and that was one of the things in my family is if you're going to do that, you have to marry this person. And
Right.
I lived with my paternal grandparents at that time. And my grandpa actually was very disappointed in me. And he's like, "You were supposed to be the good one." And that just kind of broke me in so many pieces because I love my grandpa, loved him. He's passed away recently, but I loved him to death. Everything he said to me, everything he did with me meant so much to me more than anyone in the world. So for him to say that just really broke me mentally. And I realized that I had ruined everything. I had ruined everyone's idea of me. I have ruined my life, all this stuff. And now I'm stuck with this man. So that was the main reason why I went into the marriage. And as soon as it started, I was just kind of done. I wasn't in it didn't want to be in it. I could tell he was going to be a terrible father the way he treated me while I was pregnant. And sure enough, he was terrible for the 3 years we were together. But after that, I had a brain shift again from feeling depressed and comatose to the point where I couldn't help save my daughter from any trouble he was giving her. I had another moment where I said, I'm finally on my own. No one is telling me what to do. I'm like in my mid 20s at this point, and I'm finally having this rebellious moment that usually you have as a teenager, but I'm having it as a young mom who's finally realizing no one's telling me what to do anymore. I can do what I want to do. And I did what I guess I thought I wanted to do at that point. I started sleeping around. I drank a lot. I tried drugs once. That was it. But that's what I did. I binged all that stuff for a good 8 months. I enjoyed seeing my parents upset about it. I actually told them things I did because I wanted to see them squirm. It it made me happy to see that I was sticking it to my family. I was just that's just the mentality I had is it went from a complete shift of I want to please everybody, I want to make God happy to forget everybody, forget God, who cares? I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm tired of being the good one and still screwing up. But it only lasted 8 months because I still had that firm foundation that I had of this is what you do as a Christian, this is what you don't do. So in the back of my mind, I'm warring with myself because I know what I'm doing is wrong and that God is watching me and he's sad right now. But at the same time, the other side of me is going, haha, who cares? I want to stick it to you too because I'm tired of you not being happy with what I do. And it was just like that for a good 8 months. And then I just stopped the sleeping around, tamed down the drinking, and still had that problem. But the other part was gone. Jumped into another marriage, and that's how I ended up in Connecticut, where I live now. And another mind shift happened after my second husband was, I think it was 2 years we were married. So probably about close to the 2 years. I before that I had completely abandoned God. I wasn't going to church. I was cussing a storm. I was completely unrecognizable to anyone, including myself. I decided finally that something had to give, but I didn't personally decide it. It was just in my brain. I just wasn't happy. Things weren't feeling great. It just felt off for some reason. I ended up going to a church for the first time in I don't know how many years. But while I was there, God spoke to me through the pastor. It was like it was just a one on one between me and God. And he was talking to me, and I heard it all and I felt it all inside. But then I looked at him and I said, I hear everything you're saying, but I still don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do. And then I walked out of that church service determined to continue to do what I thought I wanted to do, digging my heels in. And then a week later, my husband says, I'm leaving you. I have an apartment. We're done. It was only 2 years, and we had a child together at that point who was less than a year. It broke me. I crumbled. I was depressed. I called my then mother in law and told her, you have to take my son for a little bit. I can't handle this. And she was the one that God finally was able to get through to me with. And it's funny that it was her because she did not like me, but God used her anyway.
Wow.
And she told me, Anna, you need to get right with God. Forget whatever's going on between you and my son right now. Your children need you, and God needs you to come back to Him. Repent and just work on your relationship with God and let everything else fall the way it's supposed to. So I did that. I dropped to my knees immediately. I repented. I got up and I was completely different. I had a desire to try to save the marriage, which ended up not happening because it takes two people to do that. But I was more gentle. I was less of the woman that he knew I was. He even said it was like a light switch flipping from on to off on how different I was. And I just was in love with God, focused on Him, focused on my kids. I spent so much close time with God during that time, and I haven't looked back since. He told me that if I stayed in Connecticut, he would take care of me, and he has not let me down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and man, you unpacked a lot, Anna. I
Mhm.
mean, thank you for sharing all of that. And I know that's still only, part of the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Um, it makes a lot of sense that, when you're in that position with parents and
Hmm.
they are, putting these expectations and they're treating you the way they are, that you assume that God is going to feel the same way about you that your parents are letting you
Yeah.
know they feel about you. So that absolutely is normal. And I completely understand that part of it. Um, you mentioned that when you were going through all of this, that you felt like, God was watching you and that God was sad. Do you still feel that way? That when God was watching you back then, when you were going through all those, trials, that he was sad?
I still feel that his heart was breaking because of all the choices I made, because he knew the pain that was going to come from them later, the reaping that I was sowing, the reaping that was going to come. I think he knew ahead of time what challenges I was going to have, and that's why he was grieving. In my mind back then, it was him just being upset with me because I turned my back on him and
Right.
whatever. But now, hindsight 2020, I can see things differently now. And I'm like, I think he was more upset that this is not the plan I had for you. Please stop. Like a parent who sees their child wandering into traffic and they're trying to catch up to them in time to grab them. They don't want it to happen. I feel like that's probably more of what it was.
Interesting. We're going to come back to that point.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, the Now in your story, you find God, your mother-in-law is the one who helps you do this. And at this point, you've got two children. Is that right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes, my eldest was, I believe she was about 5, and then my youngest was probably about 1. Or sorry, yeah, my youngest at the time. Yep.
Sure. I'm just getting your timeline.
Timelines.
That's, I understand. Every day kind of runs into itself at some point. I know,
Yes.
right? Um, you stayed in Connecticut,
Hmm.
and it sounds like things improved after that. You want to, bring us up to date with that? What's happening with Anna?
It has improved, but not without the scars, because, like I mentioned briefly, you reap what you sow. And there were some things from my past that I sowed that I had to reap. I did get married again. I met my husband at that church that I went to that one time where God started trying to get me back. And that's where we met through mutual friends. And we have had struggles because it's not easy for him, especially because I told him on our first date, I told him all my baggage and he
Wow.
told me all his. He's 10 years older than me. And I was, it was my third marriage. I was like, I don't have time for this. I have 2 kids. They have 2 different dads. I'm a hot mess who's working on myself.
Yeah.
This is me. If you don't like it, I get it. Leave now, spare yourself, but he's man enough to handle it. And he's been a really good stepfather to both my kids and my the first husband. It was really rocky to work with him because he was an aggressive type of person. Second one, not so much difficult. I made amends with both of them for my part in what happened between them because in the first marriage, aside from a pornography issue that we both had at that time, I actually did have an affair with someone else while I was married to him. He kind of forced my hand in that, saying that was the only way I would be able to get out of the marriage. And because I was mentally not not thinking straight and just wanted to get myself and my daughter out, mostly myself, because that's all I cared about at that moment, and was super in depression. That was just, I was like, well, that's it. That's what I got to do. And then that's going to happen. it didn't. He wanted to stay and fix things, which made me feel like an awful person because I knew it was wrong to do,
Yeah.
but I was hoping for a better outcome, I guess. But, there's a whole bunch of scars that came with that situation. I made amends with him on that. And now that our daughter is 18, we're in a better place now where, if we have to talk, it's more respectful than it ever has been. And we still interact with my second husband, my husband and I do. And so far, it's been, not as difficult as it can be with some divorces. And aside from that, we have three kids together, my husband and I. And yeah, I mean, we have our struggles, and one of the biggest one was the thing that I never mentioned to my husband when I told you that I told him everything. I told him everything that I thought was something that needed to be told because my addiction to pornography didn't seem like an addiction to pornography to me at that point in time. So that wasn't something that I mentioned. I mentioned that I had issues with it, but I didn't call it what it was. That was the one of the main things that God started working on me with because I had an addiction where I could go long periods of time and be fine and not have to, rely on it. But then there would be other times where I would crash hard and I'd be watching it for like a week straight, maybe multiple times a day, and just couldn't stop. But at the same time, I hated myself for doing it. And I hated the people in the videos because I knew it was wrong. And then I'd quote unquote repent to God every single time afterwards. And at some point, I just got tired of being hypocritical because that's what I felt I was being as a big hypocrite, calling myself a Christian. Everything's looking good on the outside, but on the inside, I'm still struggling with this. And then at some point, when my second child was 4 years old, I was having a moment. I don't even know, but I was pregnant with my third child, about 8 months pregnant. And this was when God decided enough is enough. I'm tired of your fake repentance. We're going to fix this now. And I had a bad day. And whenever I had negative emotions, I would turn to pornography. So this was my biggest monkey on my back ever since coming back to Christ at 30 years old. I I don't know what happened, but I told my son, you got to go to bed early. Mama needs a break. So I told him, go to sleep, take your nap. And he was usually pretty good about when I put him in bed, he'd stay in bed and take his nap. So then I immediately went to my room, got on my phone, and was doing my thing. But I felt like something or someone was behind me watching me. So I turn around and my son's standing in the doorway. He can't see what's on my phone because I'm on the edge of my bed, which is far away from him. But I wigged out on him and I yelled at him, and he started crying and ran back to his room. And I felt guilt beyond any guilt I had ever felt before because nobody had ever seen me doing this before. Nobody had ever caught me doing it before that wasn't doing it themselves.
Right.
So it was like a culture shock for me, especially for my child, because I worried, did he see something? So I did my quote unquote repentance again and sat and waited for my son to get up. I literally couldn't do anything else. I didn't know what to do. I felt like a terrible mom yet again. And that's what I sat with for about an hour and a half until he got up from his nap. And then I apologized and I said, "Why did you get up? You never get up. What made you get up?" And he said, with his cute little face and his sadness, said, "God told me to go find you." And I lost it. I started crying. I hugged him and I told him, "Thank you for listening to God." And yeah, I was a wreck the rest of the day. I couldn't sleep at all that night. I woke up my husband by all my crying in the living room, and he came and asked me what was wrong. And for the first time ever, I had said, I have an addiction to pornography. I said, I thought it was something that I could manage, that it was not that big of a deal, but clearly it is. and I'm done with it. I can't do this anymore. I said, you have access to my phone whenever you need it. Here's my passwords. Here's my PIN code to get in my phone. And yeah, I told him, I ended up telling my parents, I told people at church, I told people I just barely knew. Like I told everybody, I just wanted the accountability. I figured the more people who knew, the less likely I was to do it again because I didn't want to upset people because it still had that people pleasing mentality. And in this case, it kind of worked in my favor because it's like, the more people who do know, you're not going to want to do that. So at some point, someone might say, hey, how are you doing with that? And then what are you going to do? So it did help me in that sense. And yeah, I just started telling everybody, and I got connected with a online ministry called Triple X Church, and they have ministry tools that they use for men who are addicted to porn, women who are addicted to porn, and couples who are addicted to pornography. And at the time, I don't know if they still do it, but at this around this time when I was going through this transformation, they had mission opportunities that they would do where they would go to pornography conventions in different parts of the United States and have a booth where they would make shirts for people that says Jesus loves porn stars, and they'd hand I think it was the book of John, and just have opportunities to share the gospel with people. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I'm like, I am down to do that. So I looked to see what you had to do in order to go on one of those. You had to raise a certain amount of money. You had to be free from pornography addiction for at least a year and a half. And I think there was something else, but I can't remember what it was. I was like, done deal. I can do this. So I cut myself off cold turkey from pornography, from anything higher than a G rating. I listened to only Christian music. I stuck my nose in the Bible as much as I could. I focused on God. I cut myself off from being on the computer if I was home alone. After a certain hour of the night, I couldn't be on. I had all the parameters on my phone and my computer to where it would alert my husband and a friend if something was going on. And yeah, like I wanted to go on this mission trip, and I wanted to be done. I did not want this anymore. So I ended up making it to the mission trip, and I was very excited. My husband was a little hesitant because of what kind of convention it was,
Sure.
but he could see the fire that I had for this type of ministry, and he, allowed me to go. And I started, as it's getting closer to the nighttime when this thing began, I started feeling nervous because I had not seen anything higher than a PG rating for the last year and a half. I didn't know what was going to happen when I saw all this. How was I going to act? What was going to happen to me? But once we got in there and the doors opened and I saw everything that was in there that was going on, I mean, it was all there, everything, bodies, things they're doing on computers, all that stuff was there. My heart just broke. I started crying, like ugly crying. And I felt this overwhelming urge that I just wanted to jump on a table and just start sharing the gospel, like Paul style, like just going and telling everybody about Jesus. I didn't because I'm too shy for that, but that was like almost a compelling, like if I had just allowed myself to do it, I probably would have done it. But I was just like, oh no, so what if I get arrested? Like I held myself back from doing that. But that's just how I felt. There was nothing that was there did anything to me other than make me see that this is why we are here. These people need Jesus. They need healing. They're broken. And my chains for pornography were broken that day too. I no longer felt the same urges that I did when I felt the negative emotions. I didn't need to run to this anymore. And I still feel that way to this day. I have no desire to look at it. I have no necessity to look at it. I if Satan tries to plant a past memory in my brain, it's nothing to me. I can continue doing what I'm doing. I can be on my computer all night if I had to, writing, and it's not going to affect me. Like, God literally broke my chains of my pornography addiction at a pornography convention. And it's like, glory to God, because I don't know how I could possibly try to take any credit for that at all. There's like no way.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
that was the biggest monkey on my back that God needed to work on in order for him to be able to do anything else in me. Because as long as I was hiding that and doing all that, I can't be useful for the kingdom. I can't be healthy for my family, for my marriage, for my kids while I'm hiding something of that caliber. So I don't know why I didn't think about it when I first came back to Christ that, oh, he's probably going to attack this first. I didn't see it as a thing that needed attacking. I was just, I don't know what I was thinking, but I clearly wasn't thinking that it was as big of an issue as it really was.
I mean, that's an incredibly impressive story, to be honest.
Mhm.
And you're a remarkably strong person to have gotten through all of that. Um, so power to you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful to hear. And clearly, God knew what you needed in that instance.
Yeah.
You know, he gives us messages, he gives us our callings. He starts by, with a knock on the door. And if you open the door, it works out. If you don't answer the door, he doesn't stop knocking. And the
Yeah.
knocking gets louder until eventually the door just gets kicked in.
Hmm.
And I've been there, and it sounds like you definitely were there on that
Oh,
day. And
yeah.
he uses the stuff that's going to get our attention when he gets to that point, when we get to that point, and he used your son for that.
Hmm.
Um, I know that's brutal to have that happen, but he knows what you need.
Yeah.
Um, as you have come through that, um, you've got a podcast, you've written books. Um, what's the podcast about? What are the books about? How have those come from the journey that you've been on that you've been telling everybody about?
Yeah. Well, the podcast started because during 2020, I was learning a lot of different things. I mean, there was not really much else to do during lockdown besides be on YouTube and learn things. So I learned some new things about various forms of Christianity that may not actually be biblical. I learned about, some Christian artists that I used to listen to that are no longer following Christ. And it just, all this stuff kind of broke me and made me think, wait, this is not a safe space anymore. They can be infiltrated too. And my brain started going into crazy spirals and I had to know more. So I learned from different people. And during that time, I realized that other people need to hear these things too. I can't keep this to myself. I don't want other people to continue down a road that isn't actually leading them to Christ. So during a service, I had gotten to a point where I wasn't really listening to a lot of Christian music anymore, a lot of worship songs, a lot of worship bands I couldn't listen to anymore because I had learned so much about certain of them. And our church played a lot of those. So I wasn't getting the full worship experience at church because I had barriered myself between all that stuff. And I had gotten to a point where it was so frustrating and exhausting and depressing that I just asked God, I said, I don't know what to do about this. What do I need to do? And he just kind of was like, start a podcast, talk about it. And I'm like, ooh, but I'm like shy. What do you mean start a podcast and talk about this? But then I thought about it. I want to share the gospel with people. I'm not going to just go up to some rando at a store and just start sharing the gospel. That's not me. I'm too shy for that. So I said, well, at least if I do it with a podcast, they can't diss me, because I can't see them. So I was like, huh, maybe this could work. So that's why I started podcasting in the first place. I did abandon my first podcast because my idea of what I wanted and God's ideas were different. And I was too focused on what I thought it should be and how quickly it should escalate. And because it didn't, I just kind of gave up. But this one was the one that stuck because I had a deep desire to see people helped and to show them the truth and to give them new ideas and give them an outlet to think, which is not something I did as a young person, as a teenager, I had my questions, but I never felt I was allowed to ask them. I always felt like if you did, then you lack faith. And I don't want people to feel that way. So that's why I started the podcast, is I wanted to give them what I didn't have when I was younger, a platform where they can ask questions, where they can feel comfortable coming with their concerns, their doubts, their whatever, and they can know that they're not alone in that, that maybe there's a reason why they're feeling apprehension about a certain practice that Christians do. And, that's basically why I started the podcast. As for my writing, I started that when I was a teenager because I enjoy being by myself. I didn't really have as many friends when I was in my senior year of high school, and I was an angsty teen, and I just started writing, which is my first thing I ever wrote was my third novel that just came out called Phobia. And it's not really a Christian novel, although I called myself a Christian at that point, but I was just a Christian in name only. I wasn't actually living the way that you should. So it's got some content issues in it, in the sense that it's really dark, because I really liked thriller and scary movies at that point. So that's kind of what it is more of a thriller, psychological thriller type of thing. But it does give a lot of insight into the 90s teen as well, when she's angsty and she's wanting love. And I think it's a good opportunity for people to read and understand that this is how a teen brain works. Because I didn't do anything to it when I published it recently, except for write a foreword as to why I didn't do anything with it to fix it up, to make it more of who I am now. Because I tried, man, I tried to fix it up because I knew it had some errors and some inconsistencies and all these things. But every single time I did, I got to a point where I'm like, I can't do this because it's no longer my message from back then. I said, I had a message to say back then, and who am I to say, no, you, Anna, back then was wrong. This is what it should be. So at one point, I just said, no, I'm just going to release it the way that it is. And whoever reads it, I know God will do something with it. So that's pretty much what I did. So everything that's in the story, for the most part, aside from me fixing up the grammar issues, it is what I said as a teenager. So there's that blast from the past. But my first novel that I ever wrote that I published was during 2020, and that is The Right Way to Say Goodbye. And I wrote that not necessarily because of my second divorce, but it's got a nod to that, in the sense that the main character, he's trying to save his marriage from his estranged wife, and they have a child. So it's not really based on my life, but I always put a little bit of myself into my story. So as I'm writing it, I'm crying because I can relate with the character, because I did that. I tried to save this. I tried to work through that while this person was doing this. And so I could really relate to the character. And yeah, so that story took me about 5 years to write, because I had another one of those moments where I thought I knew better than God. And eventually he had to go big to show me I was wrong. And once he did, the writing started flowing. But had I had learned that lesson earlier, it probably would have went out a lot earlier too.
Right. And you have
But
one more book then, right?
yeah, my second novel came out, I think, a year after the first one. I pushed it, if we're being honest here, I pushed it coming out earlier than I think it should have, because it's a really good storyline that needs a lot more fixing. So I do plan on fixing it again and reissuing it at some point. I just haven't had the time. But the story is about a young man who has it all. He's a very successful DJ. He's got everything. He's got all the women, the fame, and everything, but he's feeling purposeless and to the point of wanting to die. And that's kind of how the story starts. And he runs away from his life, disconnects for a time, and ends up meeting a woman who is a missionary, and they kind of fall for each other. And it's got a lot of layers to it, and it's not exactly like just a romantic Hallmark style fuzzy feeling kind of book. It's got a lot of, you know, real raw emotions in it and takes you down a dark, sad path and then, goes through a lot. But the reason why I wrote that is because I listen to a lot of techno music. I love all that stuff. So one of the people that I listened to a lot was Avicii. And sometime before I wrote this story, he had killed himself. And that kind of made me sad because I always feel sad for famous people when they do that because they have everything. You'd think that they'd be on top of the world, that they'd constantly be happy, but they're like always feeling lonely. They're feeling sad, wondering what is this all that there is. They're real people too. And I was listening to a song from a different techno artist driving to Walmart. And as I'm listening to that, I'm thinking of how I want to write a new story. What do I write about? And then for some reason, Avicii popped into my brain. And I was like, oh, I got an idea. And then I just came up with this idea. And yeah, that was basically why I decided to write it. I should have waited a little bit longer to hash it out completely. I mean, it's still a good book, regardless if you get the first or the second edition, whenever it is. But the storyline is really intense and might not be for everybody because of how dark and full of emotion it is. But I mean, I cried several times while writing it. I think I've cried writing both those books.
In writing your books, is this more of a, cathartic sort of letting pieces of yourself out into the light, or is this, writing with a purpose to impact somebody else?
I think it's a little of both because I've been told by several people that I should write my story into a book. And I've never really wanted to write nonfiction, and I certainly haven't wanted to write my story into a book out of respect for the other people involved in my story. I never like to name names of, this person did that to me or this happened. It's like you never know what their life is like now. Perhaps they've gotten themselves right, and I don't want to drag them through the mud with something that happened a long time ago. So I never really felt right about putting my story out there like that. So that's why I've kind of put pieces of myself in my story. Either I'm a character in the story, in a sense, not actually with my name, but just one of the characters. Like in the my second novel, And Then My Life Happened, a lot of who I am is the main female character in the story. Like that's just who I wrote it as, not intentionally, but she just has a lot of the qualities that I tend to have. And like I mentioned with the first one, I resonate a lot more with the main character who's trying to save his marriage. So I wanted to create Christian content without it being considered only for Christians or too Christianized to where nobody else wants to read it. I create content where you can tell that my main goal is to share the gospel with you, but I'm not going to throw the Bible at you, if that makes sense.
Sure,
So, yeah.
sure. Um, Now you're coming on podcasts, and
Hmm.
you seem like you want to do that to tell your story. Because
Yeah.
we could have like really easily just talked about books and podcasts and stuff today, and not gotten into what got you there and everything else. But
Yeah.
even in your lead-in and stuff, you seem pretty intent on getting your story out there through
Hmm.
podcasting.
Yeah. I think it's important that women know that they can be pornography addicts too, but that there's healing for them. There's a group for them. A lot of times women don't want to talk about that. It feels like something really dirty. And all these years we've been told it's a men's problem. So why would I have it if I'm a woman? what does that make me? What's wrong with me if I have a man's problem, you know?
Hmm.
And I feel it's important that women know that no, it's not just a man's problem. Maybe at some point it started that way, but it's slowly becoming a woman's problem if you look at statistics. And women, because we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to fix it, we don't want people to know we have it, we're the ones who are consuming it more because there's so many people out there talking to the men about how you got to do better. You can't do this. You can't do that. Here's a group. Go to this. Read this book. Like there's stuff for men, but nobody's coming out and talking about that for women and saying, here's a book. Here's a website. Go here. I'm here for you. I've been there. I've done that. Like no. Nobody's doing that for women. So we're hiding it and we don't know how to handle it. And it hits us different than it does men, the whole addiction itself. So it's like it's an emotional attachment as well because that's how we are. And we just feel the guilt and the shame of this is gross. Why are we doing this? And I don't want women to hide in the shadows anymore. I want them to understand that you can come out. There's others out there. And if you speak out, they're going to feel more comfortable to speak out and find that help. And I'm always telling people if you're a woman and you're struggling with this and you need an accountability, I'm here for you. I always send people to honestchristianconversations.com. Go to the navigation. It says connect or contact me. And, you know, you can leave a prayer request. You can contact me and say, hey, I need you to do this. And yeah, I'm here to help women. I even created a free PDF that I made of I think it's 5 different Bible verses that I memorized when I was trying to retrain my brain from my pornography addiction. And yeah, I mean, I try to do what I can to help. I want to do more. I'm just trying to figure out what to do because the last time I tried to really get involved in a ministry like this, God just kind of told me it wasn't time. And then now I'm getting to share my story and I'm feeling okay, maybe it is time or maybe it's close to time. But I've gotten to a point now where I'm like, okay, I'm done learning the hard way. It sucks and I don't want to do it anymore. So I'm more apprehensive with certain things that I do. And if I
Yeah.
feel a lot like maybe God's saying not yet, I'm like, okay, I hear you. You don't have to go hard this time. I got it. So yeah.
Nice. So it sounds like you're becoming an advocate for
Yeah.
a woman's anti-porn movement.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of opportunities to talk on podcasts about this because most of the people I talk to are men. There's been a few women that I've talked to, but I think it's just a really fascinating topic for everybody to see that a woman is coming forth and saying, yeah, I have this problem. I had this. I was
Yeah.
freed from it. I think it's something that is unusual. And that's what, everyone wants to talk about. And I'm totally fine with that because I love telling the story. I don't
Sure.
get to take any of the credit for it. I don't get to take any of the glory for it. How he started the process of freeing me, I can't take credit for that. I mean, if anyone could take credit, it could be my son and God. I mean, I can't take credit for that. And then how he completely broke my chains at a pornography convention, I can't take credit for that.
Right.
I mean, there's no way that that's a thing that happens. And yeah, so I love telling the story because I can't take credit for it. There's no way I could bend over backwards, do flips, whatever, but there's no way that I can take credit for any of it. And it's the biggest part of my life because it took about 17 years of my life where I
Wow.
was stuck in it. And yeah, once he freed me from that, I was able to be worked on in so many other ways because my mind was freed from the prison that it was in, the unhealthy prison. It helped me see things differently. And yeah, I want to help others do the same.
Well, and it's a big deal, obviously, because no one's really heard of it, like you mentioned.
Hmm.
But I guess the thing for me that is so striking about it too isn't just that part. It's how you combine it with the fact that you don't have to go it alone, and you tie
Hmm.
it back to how leaning into your faith, is something that has helped you heal. It's
Yeah.
inevitable. It's actually the thing that caused you to, sort of break out of the haze and realize you had the problem, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, so when you connect faith to the story as openly as you do, then you're on a whole different level of advocation for what you're doing, and um, it's really impressive to be advocating for that and also advocating for faith in God at the same time.
Hmm.
I mean, those are two tough jobs that you're putting together into one, and it's really impressive what you're doing. I applaud you for doing it. It's
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Um, you clearly have been called to spread the word on all of these things to share your story with folks. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would think so. Like I said, I'm definitely being more humble about it than I was the first time because I was asked when I was at that mission trip, I was asked to be a part of their team and do an online ministry. And I was excited to do that. I was like, yeah, I can do that. Woo. And I wanted to go to clubs and I wanted to share the gospel. Like I had all these plans of things that I wanted to do. And then after the first night of being at that mission trip, I was set on fire. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I have to do. Like, I was just in it. But Satan messed with me really good that night, and he messed with my husband as well. And I had to go home early from the mission trip. I couldn't stay for the next 2 days because there was just so much spiritual warfare that I wasn't prepared for.
Mm.
So I came back, and Satan knocked me out of the game pretty good for, I don't know, like 2, 3 years. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, God, I was trying to do something for you. I don't understand why you took this away. Now I'm just a mom and now I'm just a wife. Like, don't you want me to do anything for you? Like, that's the mentality that I had is he doesn't want me to do anything. He doesn't want me to do anything with this story. Why did he give me such a fantastic healing if he doesn't want me to talk about it? Like, I was just bitter at him because I felt like he took something from me that I was going to do for him, quote unquote. But at some point, I went to my pastor and I told him that I'm feeling stale in my relationship with God. I don't know what to do. I can't get past this. And I told him what it was. And he said, well, you're saying just when you're talking about being a mom and a wife. He said, you need to have a perspective change. Your mission field is your marriage and your children. Anything else beyond that is a gift that he gives you after you've perfected your actual mission work, which is your family. And it was just like a really big mindset change for me that I was looking at it the wrong way. I thought I was just a mom. I'm just picking up their laundry for the bazillionth time of the day. I didn't see it as what the Bible says, which is do everything you do as if you're working for God because you are, like it says in Colossians. I didn't see that as I need to do everything I'm doing and give God my best because how can I expect more when I'm not being faithful with the little that I have? So that kind of changed my mindset. And I realized, okay, I can't do this yet. It's not time. So I put that on the back burner, which was really hard for me at first because I was really gung ho about sharing my story and
Yeah.
being there for other women. But I just really felt like he was saying, nope, not time. So I let it go, the dreams that I had, and I let them go. And I allowed him to do what he needed to do in me to make me into a better mom and a wife. And he's still working through that. But ever since I found Podmatch and I put myself on there as a guest, I was not searching out to be a guest, especially to talk about this. I was more focused on the podcast and staying focused on the podcast. And for the last year and a half since I've been doing this and also working on Podmatch, so I guess for Podmatch, it's been at least a year, I
Mhm.
think, that I've been on there. But since I've been doing all that, a lot of people have been asking me to come on and share my story. And I'll gladly share. Absolutely. And I was being apprehensive about it at first because I'm like, God, is this me pushing or are you doing this? And it had been several years since that whole situation. I mean, several years and like 3 kids later, that this whole situation happened. So I was just like, if this is what you want me to do, God, I'm game for it. If this is just me, then I don't want to do it. Like I didn't want to get back into that. Oh, I'm doing this first and I'm going to start putting this before my kids and my family again. Like I just didn't want to get there. But then I started getting more offers and was like, I have to do this. Like every time I talked about my story, it encouraged people, it encouraged me, and I learned new depths of my story of who God is and how he worked in my life. I've had so many conversations where I have been changed through me telling my story again, even though I've said it I don't know how many times, but just something was said by the person, the question they asked or whatever, and it made me have another mindset change to thank God for this because I didn't actually see this before or I didn't see it that way. So that's how I started realizing, okay, perhaps he is allowing me this chance now to start this ministry because I've realized where my mistake was and I have been working on that. So, yeah, I'm very excited that now is the time.
That's a great answer. I mean, you bring up spiritual warfare, and I mean, that's a real thing. And I think people are more and more
Hmm.
starting to realize how real that is.
Yeah.
So when the devil comes for you, he doesn't bother with you unless you're a threat.
Hmm.
If you're just sitting there
Yep.
quiet and you're just going to live your life and you're not going to, advocate, you're not going to mobilize, you're not going to build discipleship, he doesn't normally mess with you. He just leaves you alone because you're not a threat. Then he wants you to just keep
Yeah.
doing nothing. But when you stand up and you start to, proclaim his word and everything else, then he comes for you. And he hits you right
Yeah.
where it hurts and does everything he can to derail you because he doesn't want you making other people strong. And so, I mean, when
Yep.
you have that kind of spiritual warfare, it sounds like you don't want to talk about what derailed you. Am I picking up on that?
Oh, no, well, I don't go too in depth for it just because of respect for my husband, but
Sure.
I can say that while I was on that first night, I got a chance to share the gospel with someone. She was topless. So that's how much changed I was from this whole thing. But I got to share the gospel with her. She was crying. I was crying. I was praying for her. And that's what really set me off to I have to do this. I love this. This is amazing. I'm going to continue doing this. And I went to call my husband. And my husband, during this whole time, was at home on his knees praying for me. So we were both,
Hmm.
doing the right things. But my first two marriages, my first one was uh, 3 years. That's how long that one lasted. The second one lasted 2 years.
Mhm.
At this point, I was getting anxiety because we were coming up to our fourth year of marriage, me and my husband, and I had never had one that lasted that long. And I was worried what's going to happen? Are we going to make it? All that kind of stuff. So that was always in the back of my mind. And, Satan kind of knew it because I had mentioned it out loud a few times. So that's how he chose to mess with me that night is with my husband. He used my husband as his talking piece to try to derail me. And the whole time I knew it wasn't my husband at all.
Right.
It was not him. I knew it. I knew by creepy by the tone of how it was is I knew it wasn't even his voice kind of thing. That's just how creepy it was. But I couldn't sleep at all that night because I was distraught about it. And the people in my team said, you got to go home and you got to work on your marriage. By the time I got to my husband, he had already apologized. He knew it wasn't him either. And we worked through everything. And now it's 10 plus years we've been married.
Wow.
So Satan, poo poo on you. You didn't win. But
Nice
that's
try.
how
Yeah.
he tried to mess with me. And it did mess with me because it derailed me mentally of, well, what do I do now? Because clearly my husband is not ready for me to get involved in this kind of ministry.
Sure.
And that's why God needed to say, you know what, you need to work on your relationship with your husband and your children first. This can wait.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it that way. I was like, no, there's a need for it now, but it's like,
Right.
no, if you try to do it now, you're going to ruin everything else. So I had to get out of my own way. And this was the way he chose to make that happen.
It's
So,
amazing the way it all works. Yeah.
yeah.
Looking back when you thought that God was, sad and when he was, upset with you type of thing, is it possible that he was just he knew it was coming and he was setting it all up so that you could be the advocate that you're turning into today, like right before our very eyes?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he knew everything that was going on, and he was, you know, maybe face palming a few times, being, oh, you could totally be doing this the easier way, but you don't want to. Okay, here's what's to come. But yeah, I can see where I look back on everything and I can see where he was during all my rebellious phases. I could see where he was still working, where he was still showing himself to me that
Yeah,
he was there. I mean, certain things I did when I was going through my 8 year rebellious phase, I could have been sent to jail for. I could potentially still be in jail for some of it. And I, I'm not. I never was, never went to jail, praise the Lord. But I can see where he was, hurting because I was doing stuff to hurt him, and he was upset with that. But he also knew what was to come from that later.
yeah,
And yeah, like he's just amazing. He knows it all. He knew what I was going to do as soon as I was born. He knew what kind of person I was going to do, the things I was going to do, but he knew how it was going to end too. And yeah.
yeah, yeah. I hear you. Well, through your books, through your podcast, and through podcast guesting like you are, you're certainly building discipleship and bringing people closer to God. And again, I applaud you for that because you're very open and you're very out there about, spreading the word and giving him credit
Hmm.
and so on. And I think that we need a lot more of that in the world. That's what this podcast kind of boils down to, is
Yeah.
people coming on and saying, "Hey, this is who I am. This is how God impacted me, and this is what I have to say to everybody." And
Yeah.
I love your message. I love the fact that you're connected like that and you're willing to put yourself out there and share it. And I know it's not easy to do. So again,
Yeah.
all the
I
credit in the world.
I was never an honest person. I always felt like a chameleon, like a hypocrite, a liar. This isn't who I am. I never really knew who I was. I'm still trying to figure it out now. Like, who am I when I'm not trying to be something for someone else? Who am I in Christ? Like, I just never had that. I never had that trustworthy factor. Like I said, I cheated on my first husband. I was not honest in that marriage. I was not honest in my second one because I was looking at pornography. Like, I just was never an honest person in my whole life. When I look back on it now, I thought I was at some point, but when I look at it, I wasn't because I was trying to be everything for everyone else. I didn't tell anyone no. I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I was never really honest with anybody. And I've gotten to this point where I'm like, honesty is so much easier. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's embarrassing, sometimes it's whatever, but it's so much easier because then you don't have to, when someone brings something up and it's like, oh, hey, remember when you told me this? You don't have to sit there and remember the story that you told them. You just have to remember the truth. And the truth will set you free, like the Bible says. And I'm trying to
Yeah,
teach that to my kids. It's very freeing. Even if you have to pay consequences for telling the truth, it's still so much better than if you were to lie and get away with that lie or get away with it for a time and then someone catches you in it. The, I just stopped being like that. I just got tired of it. And I feel sorry for my husband sometimes because I used to be the kind of person who would bottle up all my feelings. And then at one point, the volcano would explode on some random innocent person when I was finally full. I don't do that anymore. If I'm having an issue, I will just say, I'm having an issue. This is what it is. Let's fix this. No, you can't go to bed. We're not going to bed angry because I literally won't be able to sleep until we fix this. So let's do this. Like that's just how I am now, is very open and transparent with him, with everybody. And that's one of the reasons why I called it Honest Christian Conversations, is because I wanted to have a place where people can be honest, even if I may not like what they have to say or they don't like what I have to say. But I'm being honest here. I'm telling you that this is what I feel, this is what I saw, this is what I think. and, share, what do you think? Like, that's just why I called it Honest Christian Conversations, is because I'm tired of being dishonest. I don't want to be that way anymore. And maybe because I don't share everything, some people might think that's a form of dishonesty. I think it's more of a respect for the people, because some of the people who have hurt me in my past, I'm still okay with. I still, talk to them because we've worked through our issues. We've, made amends. They've changed. I've changed. And it would be disrespectful, in my opinion, to throw them to the wolves of, oh,
There's,
this is what they were like back then. Never mind the fact that they're doing this for God now, or
right.
they've turned their life around. Maybe they're not a Christian, but they've turned their life around. But hey, let's throw them in the mud. It's like, that's why I don't go into full detail with anybody unless it's a one-on-one and it's absolutely necessary. But I don't go on the podcasts and bleh everything, everyone's names and all this stuff. It's not
Sure.
one of those gossip rags or whatever. But that's out of respect for everybody who's involved in my life, because there's been some sad things that have happened in my life that I don't talk about enough. Sexual abuse, I don't talk about it a lot, but that's because it's respect for the people that were involved, who have moved on from that, repented, come to Christ, and, things have gotten better for them. And I don't want to put them in a bad light because of it. So it's like, I don't talk about certain aspects with things on the podcast. If I do, I might be vague with it. But if anyone wants to know a little more information, they're more than welcome to go to my website and contact me and ask me questions. And if I feel that God wants me to tell you, I will tell you. I mean, I am an open book. I do tell people things, but I've learned that you can't tell everybody everything, because not everyone can accept it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And you don't know what they're going to do with that or why they want to
Mm-hmm.
hear it and everything else. So no,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I think it's prudent to look at things the way you do. I really do.
Yeah.
So again, I applaud you. That's a great way to look at
Thank you.
things. So there is a way to get your message out without, having, widespread decimation and carnage and
Mm-hmm.
explosions and
Yep.
everything else. So I think you do a fantastic job of that.
Thank you.
But all right, so if people want to find your books, your podcast, everything else, is it all together at a website? Are there separate links to all this stuff?
It's all at one place. You can go to honestchristianconversations.com, and the navigation has many different avenues on there to check out.
Perfect. We'll make sure that that's in the show notes for everybody too. And Anna, I love that you came on here and you were as honest as you were, and you just put it all out there for everybody. I love that you tied it to your faith and explained how that helped you to move forward and move on. All of my best to you and your family as you continue to do these things. And when you have your next book come out and all this other kind of stuff, I would love to have you back on here anytime to talk about whatever's new in your life. I think you're an amazing person, and I'm incredibly impressed with you, and I'm really glad you came on today.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Thanks. Folks, wow. Ana Murby, wife, mother of five, writer, podcaster, um, absolutely amazing young lady with a fantastic message. And the message from us here today, and the reason that we have these incredibly powerful people on here, is because, it is time. It is time. And it's time for all of us to wake up the lions. More than that, it's time for you to take Anna's lead here and take your rightful place with your brothers and sisters and let them hear you roar. Let them hear you proclaim that he is him. The world's ready. So are you. You just have to believe it.